Go ahead and call us to order at 8:05 p.m. Eastern. Madam Secretary, when you're ready, we will do official roll call and then
Sure.
we'll do public comment.
Okay, Chair McCardle is here. Mr. Rutherford?
Here.
I am here. Mr. Redpath?
Yes.
Mr. Bost?
Present.
Mr. Nikela?
Present.
Mr. Vinson?
Here.
Mr. Watkins is absent. Ms. Yanuskavich?
Here.
Mr. Dar?
Here.
Mr. Dassing?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Here.
Mr. Garcia?
Here.
Mr. Heyman?
Present.
Ms. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. McGee?
Here.
Mr. Nana?
Here.
Mr. Bracco?
Here.
Mr. Chatterton?
Present.
Mr. Hirsch?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Maligan?
Present.
Mr. Sean?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Weir?
Transition. Here.
Okay, Madam Chair, everyone's here except for Mr. Watkins.
All right, let's see. Got Mr. Watkins. All right, next item on the agenda is public comment. So please go down to the bottom if you want to do public comment and click raise hand or reactions and raise hand. And then we will call on you. We've got 10 minutes listed for public comment and 1 person each, or 1 minute each. Right now, I only see Jennifer Hobby. So Jennifer, why don't you go ahead and get started? You have 1 minute. Make sure you're unmuted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was just wanting to make public comment to say thanks for hosting the meeting to focus on candidates. I think that's really important. And in Texas, we are taking advantage of some of the resources you've provided. So just wanted to say good things about that. The website template we put to work, and also voter gravity. So I wanted to give plugs for those. And then also to say, initially I wasn't sure about the joint fundraiser, but as I have understood it more, I'm supportive. And because I think it's, money that we're going to be able to get, without doing really anything. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other public comment? All right, going once, going twice. If not, we are going to jump into our next agenda item. Next agenda item is convention. Candidate support for 30 minutes. Okay, so some of you who are region reps, I have reached out to about this, but we need to connect with the candidates in our states. So what we want to do is I need each region rep to reach out to your state chairs, start there, or your political directors, whoever is most plugged in. And we need a list of all of your candidates. So what we need specifically, and I'm going to give you a spreadsheet to put the information in. So someone already reached out to me with an email of the candidates' names, which is awesome. But for the rest of you, please help me with the workload by dropping their information straight into a spreadsheet that I've got shared with you. It is name, email address, phone number, their state, and what they're running for, like at minimum. If you can get additional information, that is really fantastic. Does anyone have questions on that portion of it so far? Anybody? Okay, then actually, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that Ms. Hobbing mentioned. Voter gravity. So the candidate support committee dissolved after the national convention, and TJ Cozen is still helping me a little bit with voter gravity, but I have a lot going on and I need someone else to help with that as well. So if we have an LNC volunteer, that would be awesome, because we need to get our candidates connected to voter gravity and our state affiliates. Is there anyone on the LNC who is already using voter gravity? Anybody? Does anyone want to volunteer to help me get our candidates signed on to voter gravity? Anybody on the LNC? Did someone say something?
Madam Chair, I really can't sign up for that. I would say for several weeks. At that point I could, but not with ballot access, right now. I'd better stick to that.
Roman.
Yep, I can help out.
Awesome. I will connect you with Chris at Voter Gravity, our rep, and I'll chat with you about it. So basically the way that it goes is you're a region rep, so you'll be pretty plugged in on your region. We want to be generous and err on the side of signing just like everybody up to get approved. What it is we're getting them approved at a steep discount. They're still going to have to pay a monthly fee, and it's a sliding scale dependent upon what kind of race they're running. So if it's a statewide race, it's going to cost more for them to pay. If it's a local election, it's going to be a very small fee. But getting on our approved list is important. So they basically sign up on something, and it shows up in my inbox and also in an inbox for a couple of people who are on the past candidate support committee. So we need to make sure that that gets fixed by staff. And then you'll essentially check with the state chair. We basically want to make sure that the person is a member, whatever that means, and that they're not like a Democrat running or a Republican or somebody in another party trying to use our voter gravity contract. And then that's really about it. And different state chairs have had different ideas about how long we want people to wait before they get signed up, but we're close enough to the election that I don't think any of that stuff should be an issue. On that
Angela,
note, yes.
sorry, it's Stephen and Kayla. Would we want to put like a little committee together or something like that to help with signups? I'd be interested in volunteering as well.
That would be awesome. It'll also fall to the candidate support committee, but we're not gonna constitute the committee till August. So if you want to help in the month like lead up, that would be fantastic.
Sure.
Just a note. Does anyone else have questions about voter gravity? All right. Does anyone else have other candidate support questions? We also have a political director named Nathan Fatal. We want to make sure that the candidates, once we find out all the candidates, that they have been invited to attend Nathan Fatal's classes. He holds classes like every other week online, and it's open to anyone in the party. So that's another thing we want to make sure they have. We want to make sure that if they need a website, if they want a professional website, they can download the template in shop.lp.org. We do have a template website. Pat Ford.
I just want to say I had the opportunity to attend an in-person class by Nathan in Rhode Island just a few weeks ago on the Second Amendment, and it was excellent. He even went so far as to have Mr. Heller there from the famous Heller decision. It was an entire day event at a range. We shot guns. We talked 2A. We talked strategy. So anyone who has an opportunity to spend quality time with Nathan, you'd be advised to do so. It's time well spent.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anybody have anything else on candidate support? I am a little concerned. We're in the thick of election season. And I just want to make sure that we have everybody connected. And that everybody's getting the resources we have. Nobody is left behind.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a general question about these committees that we're going to seat here in August at our next meeting. Is there going to be like a link on lp.org? I've had a few members in Ohio that are interested in potentially candidate support, but also other committees. Are we going to like send out a link so people can apply, or does it already exist and I don't know about it?
We did send out a link, and the latest link, I believe, has something in the email about extending a deadline to August 4th.
Is there a link you can get to without like having to have it emailed to you, like from the LP? Because we've got a lot. So because we just reformed as a party. We've got a bunch of people coming out of the woodwork that like I don't even know if they're signed up for LP emails. I just kind of wanted some like a link to post into our internal chat.
Okay. I don't think there is, but I'm gonna pass a note to staff right now.
Or I suppose if somebody just like has a copy of the email, they could just like send me the link and I can just pass that around. I'm sure it'll work.
I'm looking for that too, but I did just ask them to put it on the website.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You got it. All right, I'll find that. Oh, committee application deadline extended. That is the title of the email. Dustin, Nana. All right, that is in your inbox.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it looks like candidate and affiliate supported it too. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we have policy manual changes up next, and Mr. Watkins is in the hospital getting his broken wrist possibly reset or somewhat decided. Does anybody want to take up the policy manual changes, or do you want to have a discussion on them?
I'd like to have a discussion, Madam Chair.
All right, let's see. Would you mind pulling
Is my
them?
screen being shared? I have them on the screen.
The agenda is, yes.
I'm scrolling down. It might be a little slow. Is it the live notes that are being shared?
Yes.
Okay. So the discussion that I would like to have is I think these need to be reworked. Obviously, I've already said I won't support them, but at least like them to be in order if they pass. We have several bylaws issues. Article 12 meetings, which talks about the National Committee having the power to adopt special rules of order and standing rules to facilitate the conduct of business by teleconference or video conference. While emails are not teleconference or video conference, those two things appear in the same section of Roberts. And right underneath Article 12 meetings, it talks about electronic mail ballots and does not give the National Committee the power to adopt special rules of order when it comes to them. When one thing is explicitly authorized, things of the same class generally are not. I don't actually think we can pass any special rules of order regarding these. That's a whole other issue. This came up because we had 3 or 4 email ballots a couple weeks ago. That's happened maybe once on 3 years. I think adding a bulk to our policy manual for something that happens so rarely is dumb. We've done that before. That's why our policy manual was 60 pages long. But in the event that we wish to do so, you can't limit the number of email ballots taking place at one time. Bylaws Article 13 says that once there is co-sponsors of at least 1/5 of the members, we could have 1 million email ballots. Please don't. I hate email ballots. I love the idea of only one. However, it's against our bylaws. Also, it would require an additional policy manual change, which was not noticed, that says notification of an electronic email ballot will be made within 2 days of the question. So only one at a time, I think, is out of order pursuant to the bylaws, but since no one is moving this yet, I won't make the point of order. Same thing here on his thing about amendments being completed within 48 hours. That's an email ballot. You can't limit the amount of time. The bylaws gives you 7 days. You can't limit it to 48 hours. That would be a bylaws problem. Sorry, I accidentally capitalized incidental here. I would like to hear the reason why objection to consideration of the question of an incidental main motions being allowed. I mean, we can pass a special rule of order for that, but there's a reason why incidental main motions aren't allowed to be a subject of objection to consideration of the question in Roberts. So I'd like to know if that wording was just chosen without reason. I don't know the argument for it. Here, when it comes to electronic meetings, it is that an electronic meeting could be called by a majority of the entire membership of the executive committee rather than just 2 committee members. I have absolutely no objection to that. If someone wanted to move that, I probably would support that one. But the email ones, I think, need to be reworked so that they don't violate the bylaws.
Mr. Nana?
Well, couple things. First thing, I think the easiest thing to do, since Mr. Watkins is unfortunately at the hospital, is to grant him the the courtesy to hear this at a later date, I suppose. Which, next closest thing would be the next in-person meeting. I do have, some issues with it, but I don't think it's worth discussing now because I think we should have a full discussion in person. And I guess the one thing I will say is I I kind of understand what he's trying to do, but also at the same time, I think it's going to have a chilling effect on some of the minority members on not even just what's going on currently, just issues in general. I mean, I've been on the LNC a long time. I've seen plenty of cases where an idea or a resolution starts out in support, with a minority amount of members, and then over time, people are convinced through debate that it's something they should support. And I think we're going to have a lot less motions and a lot less progress if we pass something like this. But I'm sure we can workshop it in person and come to an agreement, or maybe we don't. We decide not to pass it at all. But I think we should give him the courtesy of arguing for his motion when he's actually able to be there. Hopefully, he's able to be there in person in Miami.
Thank you, Mr. Nana. I had a concern about one of them being against the bylaws. I'm not persuaded that every single thing is against the bylaws and out of order. I think this probably folds pretty well into actually into talks about list etiquette and just trying to keep track of things. And there are probably a lot of things that we can do outside of policy manual changes and amendments and whatnot to just make it easier to follow business.
Madam Chair?
And I do actually think that we need to address how we handle amendments as well. Madam Secretary?
For some reason, I can't find raise hand. I hate Zoom. I would move to postpone these policy manual amendments to our August in-person meeting.
Second.
Any objection to postponing them to the August 2nd meeting?
Objection.
23rd.
August 23rd, sorry. Was there an objection?
Objection, yeah.
Do we want to just go to a vote on it? That doesn't even necessarily mean we're going to vote on it tonight, just to clarify, but it means we're not postponing it specifically to that meeting. Okay, all right, let's go to a vote.
One moment.
All right.
I was going to do a roll call, just
That is totally fine when you're ready.
I'm just filling out the form here.
Yeah, and I believe I heard August 24th, not 3rd.
Sorry.
Yeah, whatever the August meeting is, I think everyone understands.
Yeah, I think it is August 24th. I think hopefully you're flying down there by the 23rd.
I'll correct that. It's the 24th through the 25th meeting. Mr. Boss?
Is this to a specific date or postponed
Yes,
generally? I'm sorry.
it's to the August in-person meeting.
No.
Mr. Dar?
Yes.
Mr. Dassing?
No.
Mr. Ford?
No.
Mr. Garcia?
No.
Mr. Heyman?
No.
How do I have Heyman? Sorry, I have Heyman on here twice. One moment.
It's because I'm that important.
I will vote yes. Ms. Hayes?
No.
Mr. McGee?
No.
Mr. Nana?
Yes.
Mr. Nikela?
Yes.
Mr. Redpath?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
No.
Mr. Watkins isn't here. Ms. Yanuskavich?
No.
So, Madam Chair, it's 6 yes, 9 no, 0 abstention. Would you care to vote?
I don't think it's necessary. Right.
Madam Chair, I'll note that no one moved these.
Correct. Correct. Does anyone, so to be clear, that just means that the motion to postpone it to basically to a time certain to that next meeting, failed. So we can pass it, we can attempt to pass it tonight. You can workshop it and put it on the email list. I have a little bit of a concern on the amendment one. Just throwing that out there, or you could do nothing on it. Or something else that I haven't thought of.
In other words, in the words of our former Region 2 alternate, unless it's moved, it dies for lack of a motion.
Oh, Mr. Malavan, I'm sorry.
I had a question, but never mind. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Got it. All right, is anyone going to move these or any single one of them or do nothing?
Point of information, Chair.
Is that Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a way we can consider these all together besides the one with the amendment and vote on those together?
I think we need to vote on them one at a time, but you don't have to vote on the amendment one if you didn't want to pick it up.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Madam Secretary.
If you don't mind me stating, I do believe it's divisible upon the demand of a single member, so it probably wouldn't be worth it for anyone to try to move them all at once.
I'm going to move to adopt them all.
I demand division.
All right, so slow down. But you are both heard. So was that all four of them? We have four, right?
Well, because they weren't made separately, I don't really know. I mean, we have what's on the screen. We have to move to amend the electronic email ballot section in all of these blue areas here, which is section, it would be a new section 2, a new section 3. Sorry, this should be section 4. And by the way, Mr. Watkins hasn't had a chance to review this, my language, and approve it. I did the best I could to try to honor his intent. Then there's a new section 5, and then there's electronic meetings, which is just so a division would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 motions.
Let's pull up Mr. Watkins' email motions.
Madam Chair,
And
point of
I'm not saying
information.
that you have to do that. I'm sorry, Madam Secretary, but for the mover, I think that would be reasonable. Mr. Maladon.
While we wait, just to confirm, assuming that this does go to division, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter either way. Is this a majority or is this 2/3?
This is a majority of the entire LNC or 2/3, if that makes sense. Not a majority of the people present, but just like all of them.
So a majority, so that would be either 9, or 9 is the majority because we have 17 seated members, or 11 would be 2/3. Is that correct?
Yes.
No, ma'am, if I may.
You have a separate opinion, Madam Secretary?
Yeah, you are correct about the majority of the entire membership, but it would be 2/3 of those present and voting, meaning if everybody abstained, I mean, a vote of one person could carry it. It doesn't require 11 because the 2/3 is of those present and voting.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, does anyone disagree with that assessment, that it's 2/3 of those present and voting? Okay, so we had,
And I'm gonna make, well, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, just always tell me to shut up whenever it's required. I moved to divide, and I do believe they're on separate subject matters and are divisible upon the demand of a single member.
So Mr. Vincent moved it. You called for division, but I think we still need a second.
No, on division of separate subject matters, Madam Chair, it's divisible upon the demand of a single member, no second required.
Well, hold
I don't
on.
think Mr. Benson had a second yet.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No worries. Okay, so does he have a second?
Second.
All right. So now we've got separate email motions. So let's clean these up a little bit. Let's just take a moment. Has anyone pulled up Mr. Watkins, the language he put on the list?
I think I have it here.
Beautiful. Is that Mr. Vincent? Are you popping? I think you're popping.
He's cosplaying as Mr. Heyman, but that is Mr. Vincent.
All right, let me rename you.
That's why I didn't see him before.
Bob Vincent. Heyman Imposter.
We could choose to believe that Mr. Heyman is just that important or that Zoom made a mistake. Okay. I choose the latter.
Heyman Imposter. Okay. So we need Mr. Vincent, can you maybe drop that language? I don't even want to open it and look at it in the don't even go to the chat. Why don't you just forward that over to our secretary?
I mean, I have the language. I do believe I faithfully represented Mr. Watkins. He asked me to do this. He asked me to put it in policy manual form. I did not change any of his language. He just might disagree with where I put the natural, what I believe are the natural divisions.
Okay.
I did not change his language whatsoever.
All right.
I think I might have grammar changed one thing where I think he accidentally mistyped. So here's the first motion, which would be adding to email ballots, which only had one paragraph, which would then number the first one, number 1, which is inconsequential. Number 2 would be only one LNC and one executive committee main motion can be pending at one time. That would be the first motion, and I would raise a point of order.
That's the first one, and that's it in its entirety.
That would be the first one in its entirety, Madam Chair.
Okay, and your point of order?
My point of order is that bylaws, Article 13 says that once there is at least 1/5 of LNC members that have sponsored a motion, that it is a live motion. You cannot limit the number. If 1/5 of LNC members want to hear a million motions at one time, they can. I am not quite so clear, to be honest with you, about the executive committee portion of it. So my point of order is only as regards to LNC motions. To be honest, I don't think we've ever had more than one executive committee made motion pending at a time. That might be out of order as well, but I honestly don't know. So my point of order only regards the one LNC motion, main motion pending at a time.
It says boards and committees may transact business by electronic mail. The chair or secretary shall send out electronic mail ballots on any questions submitted by the chair or co-sponsored by, co-sponsored by at least 1/5 of the members of the board or committee.
And Madam Chair, there was a second part to my point of order. Well, once it's co-sponsored, then it's a live motion. But there was another part of the policy manual that would need to be amended, which was not noticed for this meeting. If we go up here to electronic mail ballots, it says notification of an electronic mail ballot shall be made by the secretary or chair by electronic mail within 2 days of the question being submitted by the chair or co-sponsored by sufficient number of LNC members. This would also have to be amended if this were in order. This was not noticed for our special meeting to be amended. So this couldn't be amended. So it's in conflict with our policy manual. I would ask the chair to consult with our parliamentarian. That's obviously her prerogative.
I did consult with a parliamentarian about some of it, and I can consult about some other parts of the policy manual being out of order, or not matching. But as far as the policy manual not being perfectly lined up, I mean, we've had a habit of having errors in the policy manual for a while now, and that's why it's been a work in progress. So did you have
well, Madam Chair, with a point of order, if I'm waiting for your ruling, and I may consider an appeal, after which time I would have more to say. But my point of order, to be honest with you, is only on the bylaws. You're correct. We can fix the policy manual.
Okay. And can you, it was just on Article 13, and your reasoning for that was?
Once a email motion is sponsored by 1/5 of LNC members, it is a live motion. And if on one day, LNC members decide to sponsor 10 motions, they have a right to do that, and the secretary can start them according to the bylaws.
The way that I'm reading this is that it's not that it's like the Ronar thing actually that I cited elsewhere that said a prohibition or limitation prohibits everything greater than what's prohibited, or that goes beyond the limitation but permits less, but it permits what is less than the limitation, and also permits things of the same class that are not mentioned in prohibition or limitation and that are not evidently improper. Are you saying it's of the same class, or that it's less, or that it's more, or do you have like a different argument about it?
My argument is that once 1/5 of the members sponsor it, it is open for an email ballot, and it can't be restricted to a different day. That it is trying to impose a limitation upon a right granted by the bylaws. I have different pragmatic arguments that I can make, but that is the bylaws argument.
Mr. Nana, did you have something to add before I made a ruling?
No, I was going to wait on your ruling. I might not have to speak.
Think. Did anyone else have any questions before I make a ruling? So I did actually get parliamentary advice on this one, and I thought it was fine, and now I'm just thinking it over very carefully.
Madam Chair, if I may make the pragmatic argument, this is a point of personal privilege. You can deny it, obviously.
Go ahead.
This was an issue one time 2 weeks ago. Let's not even come even remotely close to violating the bylaws for something that isn't a problem. I hate email ballots. I want this to be in order. I just don't believe it is. But I hate email ballots with a passion.
Mr. Chatterton?
I was going to comment. I think generally interpretation from the secretary. I could see an important consideration that having this limit could be used, I think, maliciously to limit the business being conducted under the manner that's called for in the bylaws. So I would tend to agree that it would potentially prohibit properly allowed rights.
Okay, let me ask a clarification, because now I think maybe there's a misunderstanding. It's not saying that the motions can't be moved, but it's basically putting them in a queue, right? So one closes and then the other one begins. Is that everyone's understanding? Because that's my understanding of it.
Well, Madam Chair, that is my understanding, is that they would have to be separated by at least a day.
Okay. By at least a day.
Well, it doesn't have to be 24 hours. What I'm saying is the ballot, like I could start one at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time on one day and start another one at 12:01 a.m., which would make the expiration date a day later.
Oh. Okay, I'm gonna rule this in order. If it was saying that you can't raise it at all, or that there's no queue, then I would rule that it was out of order. But because it is essentially just like in a queue and is going to automatically be heard as soon as the other motion or is disposed of, that's why I'm gonna rule it in.
Can I make a request for information?
Yes.
Is it specific to the sponsoring portion, or is this considering also the voting portion of a mail ballot?
I think this is just the entire process.
Would that limit the starting of the next ballot until after the 7-day voting window is completed?
Until it's voted on, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Nana.
Okay, well, since it's in order and we're going to debate now, I think we're all adult enough, and I'm sure this is going to come up later. I think we're all adult enough to understand that there are multiple motions going on and to do our best to keep any discussion related to that motion in a single thread and make it not chaotic. I think I can contemplate multiple scenarios where it might be necessary for us to have multiple ballots going on at one time concurrently, especially for the executive committee, if there was some sort of an emergency action or actions that needed to be taken concurrently. I don't, and I also, if we're going to, I don't know, I just don't think it's in our best interest to segregate everything out in chronological order. I mean, we're all here to do the business of the party. We were all elected by either the full membership of the party or the full membership of the national convention and or our regions. That's what we were here to do. We should be kinder and nicer to each other in general, but I I can't support this as it is written.
Thank you, Mr. Nana. Mr. Bost.
And Madam Chair, actually, I'm interrupting only because I obviously had technical problems. I appeal the ruling of the chair. I have to appeal timely. Everyone knows I posted in chat, I had technical problems. So that is an interruptible thing. I appeal the ruling of the chair.
Okay, the ruling of the chair is appealed. So those of you who had your hands up, Travis, and then it was Travis Boston, Rob Vinson. Sorry, we'll come back to you. All right, I've basically made my argument on why I ruled the way that I did. I think I gave a fairly dispassionate ruling, talked through why I
Madam Chair,
why I
point of
thought
information.
let me just finish, sorry. Why I thought it was and wasn't in order. And what my interpretation of the bylaws was. And that's what I think it is. And I consulted with a parliamentarian before. I've had 2 opinions now and talked with some of you on it. So that's where I'm at. We're gonna go to our secretary and then Mr. Malagon.
Well, it wasn't
Yeah.
seconded. That was my point of
Oh.
the appeal wasn't seconded.
Got it.
Shut the fuck out.
What?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been seconded. We'll go to our secretary, and then if there's further discussion, we can have that. And then when we're ready, we'll go to a vote.
Okay. Again, bylaws argument, you can't limit member rights. Pragmatic argument, this isn't a real issue. Members are upset over many things right now. Why would we risk passing something that might draw yet another JC appeal? I'm not JC appealing it because, again, I hate email ballots. I'm arguing against my own self-interest here. It's a lot of work on the secretary. However, why cause more problems than we already have? It's not an issue. Thank you.
You, Mr. Vincent?
I believe I'm out of order right now. I was going to move to call to question.
On the debate for the ruling of the chair, you can do that.
I'll move to call to question on that as well.
Okay.
The chair does get to speak last, even if the question is called.
Thank you, but I'm good. I have made my argument. Okay, Madam Secretary, when you're ready, we'll go to a vote on the ruling of the chair.
Well, you have to vote on calling the question first.
I'm sorry, on calling the question.
Is there any objection, Madam Chair?
Do we have any objection to calling question? All right, hearing no objection, the question is called. Now we'll go to a vote on appealing the ruling of the chair.
Madam Chair, can you please explain what a yes vote and a no vote means?
A yes vote means you uphold my ruling. So I ruled that it was not a violation of the bylaws. You heard me talk about why I said it wasn't a violation of the bylaws. You may or may not agree on the main motion, but you're not voting on that right now. You're voting on whether or not my ruling is upheld. A no vote means you don't agree with my ruling and you think it's against the bylaws for us to be voting on the main motion. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, when we're ready, we will go to a vote.
Mr. Bost?
Yes.
1 second, I'm having problems here. Mr. Dodd. Okay, Mr. Dar? Mr. Dar?
Sorry, it cut out there. The yes is to uphold, no is to not.
Yeah, yes, sir.
That would be no then.
Mr. Dassing?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Garcia?
Yes.
Mr. Heyman?
Yes.
I will vote no. Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Nana?
Pass.
One moment. Mr. Nikela?
Yes.
Mr. Redpath?
No.
Mr. Rutherford?
No.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Mr. Watkins is absent. Ms. Yanuskavich?
Yes.
Then there was a skip. Mr. Nana?
What's the vote total?
It's 10-4.
I don't need to vote then. I will vote. I will abstain.
Madam Chair is 10-4-1.
Okay, the ruling of the chair is upheld. All right, we're back on our main motion, and Travis Bost had his hand up. Mr. Bost, if you remember your question or your discussion item, please go right ahead.
Yes. I was wondering if it might not be better to have a better way of noticing when we do have the competing or the motions that are going on at the same time, getting the information out so that everybody's aware of what's going on rather than changing the rules.
Well, we discussed that a little bit on the list. I mean, in my opinion, yes, but that is strictly my opinion, if that makes sense. And I'm not sure really if we're going to come to consensus on something like that without changing the rules, unfortunately. Like, I don't know if everybody's gonna abide by a gentleman's agreement.
Follow up. Well, without changing the thresholds that we're voting to change with this one motion, perhaps over some sort of replacement or something else that works better without touching on the rights questions that have come up, is what I meant.
I don't know. I mean, I think that there are technological ways to make some of that happen, but I think that it's still going to require policy manual amendments. People are going to potentially view it as, changing their rights, like if we had things in spreadsheets instead of just emails showing up on the list. And then people could dispute whether or not that is bylaws compliant. I think it's going to be debatable no matter what we do. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer. I have a ton of ideas, but as far as whether or not people are gonna perceive them to be violations of their rights or just dislike them or think that it chills speech, I think it's all gonna be open to like every single person's interpretation. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You got it. Mr. Vincent?
I wanted to call it a question on the main motion.
Okay. Do we
Yes. Yeah, I object.
Okay. Objection to calling the question.
Well, hold on. Was there a second to calling the question?
Nope. Not yet.
Just an objection immediately.
I'm sorry?
Just an objection, not a second.
Oh,
I second calling the question, Madam Chair.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to call the question, but we do have an objection. So we probably need to go to a vote on whether or not we're calling the question.
Whoops, one sec.
Yep.
I messed something up here. It doesn't matter. It'll all be in the recording. So this will be calling the question on PM number 1.
Oh, Madam Secretary, do you mind putting screen share up?
Oh, it stopped? I'm sorry. I don't know how that happened. 1 second. Oh, it stopped when I had to log out of Zoom. Is it on?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Boss,
Pass.
Mr. Dar,
No.
Mr. Dassing,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Madam Secretary, I'm sorry, I had a technical glitch there. Could you reconfirm what the vote is? I apologize.
The vote is to call the question on the first policy manual amendment.
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Heyman,
Yes.
and I need to delete the second Heyman here again. Sorry about that. I will vote no. Whoa. I am not having a good night with this spreadsheet. Ms. Hayes?
Yes, and you can just do Control Z next time to undo your mistake.
I'm aware of that, and it's not working.
Oh.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Nana?
Some people that still wanted to talk, so I'll vote no.
Mr. Nikela?
I'm I'm gonna pass.
Mr. Redpath?
No.
Mr. Rutherford?
No.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Watkins is not present. One moment. Ms. Yanuskavich?
Yes.
And I had some passes. Mr. Bost?
Yes.
Mr. Nikela?
I'll vote yes.
Okay, Madam Chair, it is exactly 2/3.
All right, the question is called. We're gonna go to a vote now on the main motion. So to be clear, we just voted on calling the question. Now we're gonna vote on whether or not we are passing this first policy manual amendment.
Oh, I thought that was the main motion.
Sorry.
One moment. And for some reason, this spreadsheet has gotten really wonky. So you have to give me one moment. Mr. Bost? Mr.
No.
Bost? I'm
No.
sorry.
No.
Thank you. Wait one moment. Thank you. Mr. Dar?
No.
Mr. Dassing?
Pass.
Mr. Ford?
Again, I apologize. I'm in a bad spot right now. Can you restate, just so we're careful?
This is the motion to pass the policy manual amendment that only one LNC and one executive committee main motion may be pending at one time.
I vote yes. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia?
Nope.
Mr. Heyman?
No.
I will vote no. Ms. Hayes?
pass real quick.
Mr. McGee,
No.
Mr. Nana,
No.
Mr. Nikala,
No.
Mr. Redpath,
No.
Mr. Rutherford,
No.
Mr. Benson,
Yes.
Ms. Yanuskavich,
Yes.
and then I had a pass of Mr. Dassing.
I'll vote yes.
I had a pass of Ms. Hayes.
I'm going to vote yes.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just because we already had confusion on what was being voted on, and to be quite honest, I'm a bit confused on what's being voted on. Can we repeat? I'm assuming, is this for division? Is this for the first? Has it already been divided? What is this vote specifically on?
I have a second point of order after Mr. Malagans has answered.
Okay, well, let me bring up the policy manual language, unless our secretary
I
wants.
have it right here.
Okay.
I repeated this for Mr. Ford. What was being voted on is to amend the policy manual to add
we can't see it. I'm so sorry.
Oh, let me make it larger. Is this blue language right here? Only one LNC and one executive committee main motion can be pending at any one time.
Okay. Does everyone understand what we're voting on? Okay. Madam Secretary, what was your point of order?
I would ask that people please be clear on what we're voting on, because it's like debate is happening mid-vote, and that's just not appropriate. And I know we do this every once in a while, but it's gotten to be a bit much.
Okay. I
May I request that the vote just start over now that everyone understands what's happening here?
I object, Madam Chair. I explained it to Mr. Ford at the beginning.
Madam Chair, I would like to exercise my right to change my vote to a yes.
Okay, Mr. McGee.
I would also like to change my vote to a yes. The screen hasn't been displayed properly, and that was very confusing.
Who is that, Mr. Heyman?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
I am gonna pause real quick, and I'm not gonna say anything about which way you're voting, but I am gonna ask, is there something that we can do on the screen to help you see better? So, like, for example, I don't see the title of the motion, and maybe that would be
Hold
helpful.
on. Let me.
Yeah, I
No,
think
75%.
and it's like you're doing a screen share within a Zoom, so there's other stuff, like you have less screen space.
50% seemed good. Or
Let
60.
let me try 60%.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But remember, the motion text here, unless we want to make our meetings twice as long, it is shortened, and it says Policy Manual Amendment 1. Remember that these live notes you can look at as well as live voting on your own screen. So up here, excuse me, it's at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah,
if you go to tinyurl.com/LNC live notes, you can view the notes for yourself on your own screen. If you go to tinyurl.com LNC/LNC live votes, you can see the screen on your own screen without relying upon Zoom. Zoom is more for the benefit of the video.
Thank you. And I have been going back and forth with it, which is also ironically slowing me down a little bit. Okay, we are back on voting. We're going to try not to have additional disruptions. Madam Secretary, where are you at with your vote roll call?
Well, there was a request to you, Madam Chair, to redo the entire vote. And I think people were waiting on your decision.
I think, here's what I think. Instead of redoing the entire vote, if you're unclear, get your hand up right now, because I don't want to go through and ask every person so that you feel that you're pressured to change your vote.
I don't want to lose my spot in line. I'm not unclear.
Okay. I see Roman Garcia's hand up. Mr. Garcia?
Yeah, I was confused as well. I would like to change my vote to a yes.
Got it. Mr. Nana?
Oh, hold on. Can you hear me? Zoom would let me unmute. I have a point of order, but I'm not going to interrupt everything.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Okay, Madam Secretary, I'm just gonna let you go back to wherever you were at and finish doing your thing.
Okay, so all the votes are in. Madam Chair, the vote is 8 yes, 7 no. It requires a 2/3 vote for passage. Your vote will not make a difference.
It's 8 yes, 7 no.
Correct.
All right, chair's not gonna vote.
That motion, well, you declare. Sorry.
The motion fails.
Okay, now I have a point of order.
Okay, go right ahead.
I believe we are over time on this item by quite a bit. I let it go for a while, but I think we need an extension if we want to keep hammering out these other 4 or so individual motions.
Okay. First of all, Madam Secretary.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was in line for the next one, which if we don't extend time is irrelevant.
I'll motion to extend time by 20 minutes.
Okay.
Objection.
Okay. It's been moved to extend time by 20 minutes. There was an objection, but it would need a second to even be considered.
Well, hold on. One more point of, I guess, personal privilege this time.
Okay.
Can we wait until there are seconds for motions made before people object?
I agree. Point well taken. All right, Mr. Ford moved to extend time by 20 minutes. And it needs a second. If you want to be clear, if you want to continue and go through the rest of these policy manual changes, you're going to have to extend time to something. If you don't want to take up any more policy manual changes, that's fine too. Totally up to you guys. But I need a direction, or otherwise we're going to jump to the next agenda item. Last chance. All right. Dies for a lack of second. All right, so I don't think the rest of those motions are going to get picked up, and I think we're going to jump to our next agenda item.
Are you calling upon me, Madam Chair, for my agenda item?
Sorry, I was just scrolling up for it. Discussion of sending certificates of nominations to both state chairs and secretaries of state. You are up.
Madam Chair, I object to the consideration of the question.
There's no question. It's a discussion item.
Okay, there's no question. So
my apologies.
No worries, Mr. McGee. Okay, go ahead, Madam Secretary.
Yes. At the National Convention, we had signed 2 certificates of nomination. Was my understanding that there were 2, that a photocopy would be made of them for our records, and one would be automatically sent to every Secretary of State. I have emails to that effect, and that one would be sent to every state chair. We knew there were state chairs that were absentee. We didn't have good mailing addresses for them. We might not have known they've changed. And that was the reason for the fail-safe to the Secretary of State. It's my understanding, and I'd like to know if it's correct, that certificates of nomination have not been sent to every Secretary of State, though attempts have been made to send to every state chair. That's not in dispute by me. My question is, and my discussion is, has certificates of nomination been sent to every Secretary of State, and I have one state in particular that two that I'm asking about, those being Montana and Wyoming.
Mr. Nana?
Oh, I didn't know if you were going to answer her question first, but I just had, I guess, a comment, but I'll let you answer the question if you desire.
Sure. Not every Secretary of State has received a nomination certificate. Some of them require special certificates that come straight from the state chairs and not national.
I do have a follow-up then, because this was my discussion item. I realize that Colorado is one of them. The way we know that is by sending them our form, and then they write us and say, we need something different, without sending them, which is at least, and I understand the chair may dispute this, I'm not going to argue about it. I agreed to spend a second hour there signing certificates of nomination for that purpose. So I would like that our standard certificate of nomination be sent to every single Secretary of State, except for the ones that we know already have them. And that would include specifically Montana and Wyoming.
If you want to discuss things that are regarding dragging us into potential litigation, we can do that in executive session, but that's not something that I'm comfortable discussing in this meeting. And it's something I've done a tremendous amount of work on behind the scenes that's not getting any credit. I don't appreciate getting dragged through the mud on it.
I don't appreciate it saying that we're going to get sued for following the will of our delegates at convention to send certificates of nomination to every state, including that of Montana and Wyoming. I do not believe that drags us into litigation. If so, that is litigation that the National Party should gladly engage in. These are our duly nominated candidates.
Okay. Mr. Malga?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't appreciate this agenda item first and foremost for the reasons that you already stated, and this is getting absurd. As a state chair, I can say I've spoken to my Secretary of State several times. They will only accept something from me. They have received nothing from national. So contrary to the Secretary's belief or statements that this is something that has been in practice for a long time, that's simply not true. I'm actually still verifying to ensure that the certificate of nomination is something that they will accept. They have made it very clear to me that they may not accept the certificate of nomination that I currently have in possession. So I've sent them a picture. I'm waiting to hear back from them, and I have plenty of time before the deadline, just to be clear. But this whole thing has just gotten absolutely absurd and out of hand. It's almost like we should let state chairs do what they're supposed to do, because not every state is the same. Thank you, federalism. I yield the rest of my time.
Mr. Nana?
Well, I'm not going to wade into the argument, but what I will say is I don't think it's harmful to send the certificates to the states. I'll give you an example. Here in Ohio, we had the certificate that you sent to us, and once we turned in our petition for party access, we then had to go and petition again and get 50 signatures from people who didn't vote in a primary in the last 3 years to put Chase on the ballot as a Libertarian candidate. And along with that filing, I did turn in the certificate of nomination, and it was not clear whether or not they wanted it, but I had them timestamp it anyhow so that they could not say they did not receive it, in case later on down the line, the Secretary of State, who, many of these folks are adversarial towards us, could not claim that we did not have one. So I don't, and I also, I don't, some state chairs don't live anywhere near their Secretary of State. I don't know that we should necessarily burden them all with going to the Secretary of State's office in person with this paperwork. I don't think it's harmful to send it out, and I think we should do it. Unless there is some specific instance where we know, like ahead of time, that they don't want it or that they need something different. But I don't think blanket sending them out to places where we don't know one way or the other is going to be harmful to us.
Madam Chair, I cannot raise my hand. I'd like to be in line. Didn't want to interrupt Mr. Nana, but I tried to say this before Mr. Nikela raised his hand.
Mr. Benson?
Yes, Madam Chair. Here in Florida, we sent our certificate of electors off. We were able to get them signed within a week, and our state chair, along with electors, are going to be delivering that to Tallahassee proudly. As the LNC, we are not familiar with all 50 states' different processes of doing this, and we don't live close to the state capital of any of these states, so it's better handled by the states to let them, put their own documents to their own capitals, and it's far more efficient this way.
Thank you. I will tell you that there was no documentation on this process, and staff and I have worked to have everything documented. And to my knowledge, all 50 of them have already been sent out at this point, just so people are aware. There's no documents that are being withheld. Things are out. Every state has one. Every state has been contacted. Mr. Dassing?
I'd like to move to close discussion.
Madam Chair, on the agenda, I'm entitled to a certain amount of time. This isn't a question. When it runs out of time, it runs out of time.
Okay, well, they're moving to close discussion permanently or prematurely.
I don't think that's an order. And what's the harm in hearing people talk? This is just really ridiculous. I only have one other thing to say.
Okay, well, it's been moved and seconded to close discussion on the agenda item and move to the next one, and I'm going to rule that it's in order.
And I would object to that, and I will just start it on the email list, which I can't be prohibited from doing. So it's better just to discuss it here. This is ridiculous.
Okay, so you appeal the ruling of the chair?
I certainly do.
Okay. That needs a second.
I'll second.
And Madam Chair, who's the one who moved to close? I didn't get that. I believe it was Mr. Benson, but I don't want to.
No, Dassing, Mr. Dassing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nana?
Well, I guess just put me in line. We're about to vote on an appeal of the chair, which I didn't know whether or not was going to happen. I have discussion if we're going to continue it.
Well, I get to speak to my appeal.
Okay.
Okay. This is a discussion item which we have always had before. If we're the only thing you can move to close, this would needed to have been a motion to amend the agenda at the beginning. This silencing of you can't even hear a dissenting point of view. It's just absolutely ridiculous. It's transparent to everyone what's going on. I'm just going to say what I had to say before. The chair saying they've all been sent out is a diversion. I'm asking if they've been sent to the Secretary of State to say that this process hasn't been documented. If only you had a secretary that did this in 2020. I wonder who that could be, who might know how we handled it. That's such a mystery. It was sent to every single Secretary of State in 2020. I withdraw my appeal. I said what I needed to say. Wow, that hurt you.
You need to come to order. That's really
Madam Chair, if I could just.
Well, her appeal is withdrawn.
Sure. So we're still on this discussion. So are we still? No one voted on the discussion item. So I'd like to just say one quick thing before this is done. I couldn't disagree with Mr. Nana more. There is harm in sending stuff out to the SOSs without the chairs being involved because one, they're not fully aware of what's some chairs just aren't proactive. This is the reality of the situation. I had to call my SOS multiple times to find out what it is they exactly needed because I got multiple different answers. This is also why multiple people shouldn't be contacting state secretary of states. There should be one person in charge, i.e. the person that is in charge of the affiliate the chair of that specific affiliate that is in charge of this kind of stuff. So I just want to make that very clear that there could be harm in something like this coming to fruition, because if chairs don't understand what's going on, or they just take someone's word for it, you can get 3 different answers on any given day. And it's absolutely absurd that you have multiple people communicating with any Secretary of State outside of the state chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Malgon. Let's move on. All right, we're going to move to the next agenda item, which is list etiquette. Okay, I should have put this before Mr. Watkins' motions. Sorry, I was moving things around. It will be helpful if the secretary and I workshop these agendas behind the scenes together next time so that we get everything out in the appropriate fashion and no one is confused. So one of the things, there were a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Obviously having competing motions going at the same time is confusing, especially if they're not being, if people aren't being prompted. Like our secretary used to prompt us right before a motion was going to close. I think it would be helpful if she continued to do that. There's 24 hours left, you know, harass the people who haven't voted yet. I think that would be really helpful. I also think it would be helpful if we kept friendly banter and chatter either to a minimum or in a separate thread. One of the things that I think Mr. Watkins had mentioned was having votes happen in threads and having discussion happen in another thread. I don't know if we need a thread that is just like the ongoing email motion vote thread, anything like that. I'm open to pretty much all of it. But I think it just needs to be easier. And then obviously also personal insults. I don't think we're off to a good start of our second term like that. It hasn't evolved into what our last term was, but I would like us to try to rein in the rage. Mr. Nana.
Well, I do have a couple of suggestions that may or may not be taken well on how we can better know what's going on the list. And I do agree that a separate debate thread from the voting thread should be maintained. There should be no debate happening in a vote thread. It clutters the thread. It makes it so people are confused as to what's going on. So absolutely, I think we should do that. And then maybe it's the problem with email is that you can't like close a thread. Like you can't. Ideally, you'd be able to close the debate thread once voting started. That's it. It's done. You're no longer debating. Because if we were in a live meeting setting, I couldn't just like interrupt the middle of the vote and start talking about my opinion. Unfortunately, we can't do that. It's just the limitations of email ballots. I think most of us agree that email ballots are not ideal. But an idea for like letting people know what's going on, what vote has started, what votes are about to end. I don't think it would be against the policy manual to add additional communications outside of email that would like remind people. So like, what if I mean, Discord comes to mind, but I think it would end up getting messy. But what about like, if we could find some sort of electronic means that would ping people's phones that would say like, hey, this vote has started, or like, hey, this vote ends in 24 hours, or something along those lines would be what I'm imagining. I just don't know if I don't know that I could name the product or service that would actually do that.
I can ask staff. I mean, it's like, you know, an identifier on the threads where votes are actually happening would help. You're like you said, if it was Discord or Slack or something, we can give them like a little icon. But if there's any way so that vote threads can automatically be flagged a certain way, and so like a little reminder could go up like 24 hours left before this thing expires, anything like that I think would be helpful. I don't mind having it be automated at all. I'm not trying to create busy work for people, but it was something that the secretary was doing. I don't see it happening as frequently now, and probably part of that was due to the chaos of it. So I'm open to any of that.
Madam Chair, I can't raise my hand, just FYI.
Okay, I will jump to you after Mr. Nikela. Mr. Ford?
It was I who originally raised the question on a live voting thread, live debate thread. I think it's paramount at this point It's actually a transparency measure because I'd like to be able to have membership see exactly how we voted. I think it should be a separate vote email. In the item can be a specific reference to the what's being debated. And it allows people to go back in time and quite frankly see a record of where people voted and where people stood on it, minus a lot of the drama and the controversy and the back and forth. I think it's paramount at this point that we consider something like that in the very near future.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nikela, then we'll jump to our secretary.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Dustin had mentioned before. Even during the email ballots, I was thinking we really should have a separate thread for debate. And maybe even consider, I mean, ideally we'd want to probably debate before we even get into a co-sponsorship, which I know in the past that's been the unofficial tradition is we do a little debate, then we form a motion, then we get co-sponsors, and that way we can avoid amendments. So just as an etiquette procedure, that's always worked best. If you've got a motion, say, hey, look, guys, I'm looking to move this motion email ballot. I'm going to move it in a day or two. Let people comment on it, make the suggestions. It's more likely to pass when most people like it. And then get your co-sponsors. That's always been the best. And it's not often that we get 3 or 4 motions at the same time on the list. So it was confusing. There was a lot going on. But yeah, if we could get some type of notification, maybe on a single thread or somewhere, just an update, hey, this closes in a day or whatever, if it's a bot or just somebody saying it, that'd be great. And hopefully, if we have our monthly meetings, we can try to keep things on the monthly meetings instead of email ballots. But that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Nikela. Madam Secretary.
Hey, as I've said a million times, I hate email ballots. They're horrible. It's one reason why I've moved now 3 terms in a row to have monthly monthly e-meetings. I do try to remind everyone who hasn't voted, and a lot of times I do it by personal text, which is why you do not see it on the list. I just did it today on the list with Mr. Rutherford because I did not see his email vote, and he's the last one remaining on an XCOM. I have no problem doing that, but I'm not a robot. If you can find a robot to do it, that would be wonderful. But people saying there should be a text message or there should be this, we have an email list. That's what that is. The whole idea of having the spreadsheet where you can see how everyone voted, that is a new innovation that I did that had never been done in the past. Everyone should put a Google alert or a calendar or whatever Outlook's equivalent is to remind them when they haven't voted or vote right away. But I will certainly put an alert to try to remind anyone who hasn't voted before the email expires. I've always attempted to do that, and I will continue to do that. And I would encourage all of us just to have less email ballots because they suck. Secondly, the reason why I'm opposed to, and it would require a policy manual amendment, which is fine, we're allowed to do it, of a separate voting thread from a debate thread. And contrary to some offense that was taken on the list, I do not think anyone on this LNC is trying to make a secret list, but some people don't understand the history. Our bylaws actually do not require us to have an open email list. I've said this openly before. It does not require. If this LNC wanted to go completely non-transparent except for votes, you all can do it. The one great thing that Nick Sarwark did was make the email list public because there used to be an email list that was just called LNC votes. And all it had was the voting because that's all that's required by the bylaws. He merged the 2 things together so that our discussions would be public. And that's the only reason I oppose it, is because that was a great work for transparency, the best thing Nick Sarwark did. I don't think anyone here is trying to go back to the old days, but I do think separating out the 2 sets up it for a future LNC to go back to the old days. but a policy manual amendment could separate out the debate thread from the vote thread, like I did with Mr. Watkins. I'd be more than happy to help craft that policy manual amendment, even though I wouldn't vote for it.
Thank you. Ms. Yanuskavich?
So I would be in favor of separating out the debate and the vote, the motion where we vote. But I'm wondering if somebody who understands Outlook better than me can say if the secretary pinned a vote, the active vote email, would that show up as a pin for everyone, for example, and that it stayed pinned until the vote was closed?
If you went into the group, then it would.
Yeah, I think I could do a chat, a team chat, and I'd have no problem trying that out to see if it worked for everybody.
Well, when you send an email, you can select pin or flag or whatever, or important, or we could come up with whatever. But
willing to try any of that.
Because then it would show at the top of our email list whenever we signed in, or for example, and then we would know, and we could remove the pin ourselves or whatever for our purposes, and after we vote. But that would be one way. You know, it's hard to dig through the emails. I get so many, not even, you know, just other stuff that I'm doing on the LNC, finding those motions. Did I vote? Didn't I vote? Is difficult. So I think if we could do some testing. Oh, I see the chair is testing now. That might be a very simple way to solve this.
I just sent one that had a little thing on it. Mr. Malagon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank you for putting this on the agenda. I think it is important to discuss. I never thought I would see the day that I was on an LNC and I was emailing to try to curb tensions between other LNC members. So I do apologize for my banter and jokes on there. I will not call Mr. Watkins gay on the public list. I will tell him that in private. He's not here, so I'm pouring one out for him.
Please tell him in the banter discussion list. The thread.
The banter discussion. That's right. The private banter discussion list. I honestly, it is really interesting to me. I mean, for those of you that are unaware, and I think that everyone is unaware as of late last term, we have a lot of people following the thread. Some do it for because they have nothing better to do. Other people do it just so that they can, you know, screenshot certain things that they believe is beneficial for defaming the LNC or particular people on the LNC. But we do have major outlets that follow the public list now. And actually, I am starting to understand why the bylaws say a particular thing and why it was practiced in the past to strictly just have votes on the LNC public list and have everything else be private. And I would be in favor of returning to that method should things continue. I mean, and this is me saying this of all people, you know, attacks on the chair, they're not really productive for proactive discussion. Casting, I mean, we wouldn't allow during regular debate for anyone to cast aspersions on other members, let alone intention. So for that to be done on a public list that a lot of people are following, and not just within our circles, but you know, major press outlets, is really not productive. And if that practice is going to continue, I don't know what the method would be to do it, but I would push to make sure that we only have what is absolutely necessary on the public list and everything be done. If we're going to be dysfunctional like this, I'd rather it be done behind closed doors than in public.
Madam Chair, I apologize. I can't raise my hand. It's probably me being almost a boomer. In the past, because our bylaws only allow certain things to be quote unquote secret, I'm not using secret as a pejorative. All that happened in the past when it was the way Mr. Malagon suggested is that certain LNC members, and they weren't breaking any rules, just forwarded all of those emails to news outlets. And once you tell libertarians they can't see something, they want to see it even more, and they make it even juicier. So having things out in the open, however uncomfortable it might be at times, is far preferable than someone simply forwarding it to some other Google list. And they would not be breaking any rules to do that. So I just sometimes tell people, be careful what you wish for. It's not going to be me. I don't got enough free time for that. But it happens. And it's better to just have it out in the open.
Mr. Ford?
I agree in the sense that I'm in favor of full, complete transparency. I just have to throw out the rhetorical question. This is not directed at anyone in particular, but how often do people take advantage of the list to play to the crowd, to actually be incendiary, to actually gin up emotions? I wish we could find a way to balance transparency and I'm not talking about the banter, but talking to each other in a collegial manner, as opposed to, again, let's just say, I'll just leave it at playing to the crowd. That's where I see the issue right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. All right. If there's no other comments on this, is there anything else? All right. If there's not, we're going to go to the next agenda item. Oh, Mr. Nikela, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think grandstanding is always going to be an issue, and that's always been something that, yes, people take advantage of the list, of course. People do it on social media. They're going to do it through their media outlet of choice. They're going to do it during LNC meetings. At the end of the day, we got to work with each other to get stuff done. And I think that's why in-person meetings are so crucial too, is because we actually get a chance to see each other face to face, which changes the mood entirely. And I think that's key. So, just don't say anything you wouldn't say in public and private, and or don't say something you wouldn't want to get out there. Really, is the nature of our jobs, as we know, and and treat each other with respect. That's all we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Nikela. All right. If that's it, we're going to the next agenda item. Let's see. And I believe this is Ms. Harless's agenda item.
Yes, it is.
Madam Chair, I object to the consideration of the question.
All right. Mr. McGee has objected to consideration of the question.
Is there a question to, I'm confused. Is there a question?
I didn't even make a motion or get a second yet, but that doesn't seem to matter anymore.
I'd like to second Mr. McGee.
The motion is...
Nobody seconded my motion yet.
Well, it's agendized. Would you like to speak to your motion and then have someone queue up for whatever it is they're going to say?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even made the motion yet.
Okay.
So I'd like the opportunity to make the motion. I won't even speak to it. It's been set on the list. I'd like the opportunity to make the motion into the record. If someone wishes to second it, then obviously an objection to consideration would be in order. May I make it, Madam Chair?
Sure, you can make your motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Entitled Resolution Condemning the Libertarian Party of Colorado for endorsing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and attempting to place him on their ballot line. Whereas the Libertarian National Committee recognizes Chase Oliver as the legitimate nominee for the Libertarian Party, and whereas the Libertarian Party of Colorado has indicated their desire to place Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the ballot as the Libertarian candidate, despite his not being the duly nominated candidate of the Libertarian Party. Therefore, be it resolved that the Libertarian National Committee strongly condemns the actions of the Libertarian Party of Colorado, intending to place Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the ballot as the Libertarian candidate, and Be it further resolved that the Libertarian National Committee urges the Libertarian Party of Colorado to take immediate corrective actions to rectify this situation and revoke their nomination and cease any attempt to place them on their ballot line. Thank you.
I'll second.
Objection, it doesn't need to be seconded to be objected to.
No, I reserve my right to object.
Well, I think it has been, right? So who objected, just so I could get this down?
Jonathan. That would be Mr. McGee.
Okay. And there was a second already to that, I think, from Mr. Heyman.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
I think Mr. Heyman just comes on these calls to test out his podcast voice.
I'm working on my God voice.
Was the second to second the objection? I don't know if we needed one, but I'm just curious.
It doesn't require it, and I don't actually think that it requires the motion be read either because it was already noticed.
That's what I thought too. And I didn't think it needed a second either. I just wanted to underscore it.
Doesn't, yeah, thank you though. Do we need to go to a vote on objection to consideration of the question?
Absolutely.
All right. Here we go.
And it would be yes to object and no to not object, correct?
I'm letting Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Bost.
Sorry, I got distracted. We're voting on the objection, yes?
Yeah, if you're voting yes, you're voting to uphold Mr. McGee's objection.
Thank you.
And this is to not even consider the motion that was made?
Correct.
Pass.
Mr. Dar.
No.
Mr. Dassing.
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
I rarely do this, but pass.
Mr. Garcia.
Oof. Yes.
Mr. Heyman.
Yes.
I will vote no. Ms. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Nana.
No.
Mr. Nikela.
No.
Mr. Redpath.
No.
Mr. Rutherford.
No.
Mr. Benson.
Yes.
Ms. Yanuskavich.
Yes.
Going back to Mr. Ford.
No.
And then I think Mr. Bost passed too. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Brown put in the chat, I think he's actually correct. The voting is backwards, but I think we know what's happening, but it should have been yes to consider and no to object, but that's okay.
But it requires a 2/3 in either event, and there was not a 2/3 in either event.
I'm sorry, I can't see the vote total. Do you want to let me know that I can?
Well, okay. Mr. I'm a little bit confused, to be honest with you, Madam Chair. Right now, it's 8 not to consider the question, 7 to consider the question, but it would take a 2/3 vote not to consider it.
And a 2/3 vote is how many people right now? 10?
The way it's not of the total number. Here's the easy way to know if there's 2/3. If the number in the affirmative is exactly or more twice the amount in the negative. So like a 10-5 vote would be a 2/3.
Gotcha. Okay, so objection to consideration of the question is not going to pass.
Correct. And I would like to speak to my motion.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. I will keep this brief. It was on the list. If the LNC cannot even get behind a slap on the wrist to a completely wayward affiliate that is not honoring the will of the delegates at convention, that is just an absolute complete shame. And I would also ask, obviously, well, I would ask this of Region 1 as well, but any regionals that aren't in favor of this, I would really love to know if your regional chairs are in favor of this, because I've spoken to some regions and I know how they feel. And of course, it's your prerogative to go against your regions. I'm not in your regions, but this is really, really mild. This has been watered down 3 times. And if we can't even do this, let's not have a national convention, because we are not honoring the will of the delegates. And I would have to say, though, I'd vote no. If you guys don't want to support the nominees, have the guts to actually try to revoke their nomination rather than these silly games that we're playing. I would respect that a whole lot more. Thank you.
Mr. Nana?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I agree with the secretary. I think the original motion that this was derived from was made by me. And some issues with it were pointed out, which the points were well taken. So I think we've arrived at a point where all we are doing is simply affirming that the delegates at the national convention selected a candidate that is not the candidate, or the candidates, I should say, that were attempting to be placed on the ballot in one of our affiliates. I believe that as a national party and as a national board, we have a fiduciary duty, according to our bylaws, to fully support our nominee, whoever that is, whether or not we agree with who that nominee is. And I believe this is the least that we can do to do that. I think we could do a lot more, but I know there is no appetite to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Nikela?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To reiterate what's already been said, this is, hi, Lana. To reiterate what's already been said, hold on a second. Obviously, we have a candidate that we've chosen at convention. This is the first time in my memory, and I think in the history of the party, as far as I know, where we have had an affiliate and potentially affiliates that are saying, you know what, we don't care about the delegates. We don't care about our voters in our state. We're going to put who we think is best for the Libertarian Party, regardless of what everybody else says. To me, that's not only a violation of the charter of the Libertarian National Committee when a state signs up to be a part of our process, to go to our convention, to have delegates at our convention, to submit their votes and have what's essentially a democratic process, or at least a legal process that we establish as a political party. And what Colorado's doing is they're saying, we don't care. And we don't care about you. We don't care about your opinion. And quite frankly, we're going to do whatever we want. I think by not supporting this, we're essentially blessing what they're doing, and we're saying it's okay, do whatever you want. It's your right. We don't care either. And what ends up happening is, in 4 years from now, the folks that are silent on this or may not support this now, what happens if it's a socialist candidate, which, RFK, by the way, does have many socialist positions, but what if it's a real communist candidate? Or what if it's, Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anybody else? It's something that seriously disunites the party, and it essentially means our ballot access doesn't matter, at least not at the federal level. To the extent that it does matter and we get our few percentage points, it certainly wouldn't matter if we really do have a chance to move the needle, because we're essentially just giving it away. So to me, this is a massive affront to the organization. I know many people within the Libertarian Party of Florida that I'm close to, that have been around for a long time, that have very low opinions about this, that no longer want to participate in the party because of stuff like this, and they're pretty pissed. And I'm one of those people. Quite frankly, I'm not going to leave, but I'm pretty upset about it. So things like this, I think, really need our consideration. We need to do something about it. This is not good when affiliates are going their own way and they're saying we don't care about the process, we don't care about what we're doing here. And in 4 years, when we have a new candidate, what's stopping the same thing from happening then? What if it's a candidate one side likes and one other side doesn't like, and they just say, well, you guys did it to us 4 years ago, we'll do it to you. Who cares? This needs to be nipped in the bud now. All this is a censure. It doesn't really do anything. It just says we're not happy about it. It's literally the least we can do. I suggest that we do it, and send a message saying this isn't right and prevent other states from doing this, hopefully. And there may be consequences in the future. I don't know. We're limited in what we can do, but I think we can do everything that we can to say this isn't right and we don't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nikela. Mr. Benson?
I could say a lot. I disagree with the last two speakers, but in order to save time, I will call it a question.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, point of order. The Region 4 rep has stepped away for work-related purposes and has asked me to take this vote.
Thank you. I believe calling the question needs a second.
I will second.
Okay, any objection to calling the question? All right, hearing none, the question is going once, going twice, called, and we will proceed to a vote.
Mr. Bast. Did we lose Mr. Bast?
Pass.
Thank you. Mr. Dar.
I vote in favor of the resolution.
Mr. Dassing.
No.
Mr. Ford.
I vote in favor.
Mr. Garcia.
No.
Mr. Heyman.
Emphatically no.
I will vote yes. Mr. Maligan.
To top Mr. Heyman more emphatically, nay.
Mr. McGee.
Just a simple no.
Mr. Nana.
Yes.
Mr. Nikela.
Yes.
Mr. Redpath.
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford. Did we lose Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
No.
We don't have Mr. Watkins, Ms. Yanuskavich.
No.
Mr. Bast?
No.
Okay, Madam Chair, it's 7 yes, 8 no.
Okay, the motion fails. All right, that is the end of the LNC meeting, except there's one thing left.
Motion to adjourn.
That's right.
Second.
Okay, any objections to adjourning? All right, hearing none, we are adjourned at 9:53 p.m. from the LNC meeting.